Welcome, everybody, to this collaboration between Clearer Thinking and 52 Living Ideas meetup. So I'm just delighted to be working with Clearer Thinking. We did two meetups. First time we had 125 people. Second time we had about 80 people, and the feedback was excellent. So we're planning to repeat the performance today, and we've decided that this is no longer experiment. We're going to do this on a continual basis, once a month. So we're very excited about that. So welcome, everybody. So today we're going to be talking about um, about our mistakes and how do we handle our mistakes. So I'm going to hand it over to Josh in a second, but I want to tell you the format. So Josh is going to start with a presentation about learning from our mistakes. Then you're going to do an individual exercise based, he's going to specify the exercise and you're going to do the exercise. And you're going to come back, talk for a short period of time, then divide into small groups to share your takeaways from the exercise with a small group of people, about 3 to 4 people. Then we come back, then we're going to move to kind of a meta level of saying, okay, why do people make mistakes like this and keep making mistakes all the time? So we'll be talking about at the meta level, and then we're going to do another group discussion based on that. Then we will come back, talk about our takeaways, and then we're going to have social time after that. At 2:30, I'm doing another meetup on systems thinking by architect called Buckminster Fuller. So if you're interested, you're welcome to stay for that. So that's the plan. All right. So Josh, take it away.
Thanks. And I just want to say a quick thank you to Shrikant for hosting and emceeing and all that. And originally, Spencer Greenberg was going to be giving this presentation. You may remember him. He presented last time. He had something come up and couldn't be here today, so he asked me to pinch hit at the last minute. So hopefully, I can do justice to the ideas that he might have presented. Um, so I just have a couple quick opening thoughts about learning from mistakes, and it feels hard, I think, sometimes to say. As I was trying to think through the things I might say, it feels hard to say anything particularly deep about learning from mistakes. Um, I'll have a couple reflections I'll share with you, but I think actually the depth comes from the digging in and doing your own reflection, not necessarily from any particular reflections I have, but from you sort of looking at past mistakes and thinking about how you can avoid them in the future and learning from them and that kind of thing is where the real depth comes from. Um, but here are a few thoughts. So number one, everyone makes mistakes. It's a universal human experience, but I think not everybody learns from their mistakes, and that's one place where we can all, I think, improve in our lives is making the effort to learn from our mistakes. Um, Number two, mistakes are valuable. Obviously, they hurt when we make mistakes. We can ruin our own lives. We can ruin other people's lives. We can ruin our relationships and so on by making mistakes. But at the same time, mistakes can be incredibly valuable learning experiences, and that's, I think, the facet of mistakes that we will really want to focus on today. Something that I noticed as I was uh, thinking about what I might say today, and I don't know if I had noticed this before, but it's interesting that when we make mistakes, we almost never think, "Hey, I'm going to make a mistake right now," and then I go make a mistake, right? Like normally, every decision we make, we think we're doing the right thing in that moment, and that's a really critical insight because what that should tell us is that if we think we're doing the right thing and then it turns out later to have been a mistake, our judgment was miscalibrated, right? Our judgment was incorrect. And that means we need to tweak our judgment. We need to tweak how we think about the decision that we made. And so that's sort of it's a scary part of it, right? Because every moment of our lives we think probably that we're doing the right thing, and it's only later when we see the consequences that we recognize that, oh man, that was actually a mistake. So that's something where I think what I'm trying to get at is that we ought to uh, develop a little bit of skepticism about our feeling, and it's just a feeling that we're doing the right thing, right? We can't always know that we're doing the right thing. So trying to develop some skepticism about, do we really know that we're doing the right thing? Another thought that I had about this is that, learning from our mistakes is not the same thing as regretting mistakes. And um, regretting, I typically take to mean like, I wish I hadn't made that mistake. I I've kind of come around. This is a half-baked thought, but I've kind of come around to the view that regretting mistakes is kind of a waste of time and energy because they're in the past. We can't do anything about them. What we can do is learn from them and try not to make them again. And so, the best we can do, I think, is to be thankful that we made them. I know that's hard, and we wish we hadn't made them, but we can be thankful anyway that we've made them and try to learn from them. Another important thing I think, and this is part of what we're going to be trying to focus on today, is that we often avoid talking about or thinking about our mistakes. Uh, we hide them from ourselves. We hide them from others. We make excuses about them. We blame them on other people or on circumstances and that kind of thing. And you know, sometimes that blame on other people or on circumstances, it can be justified, but there are a lot of cases where we make mistakes and we don't hold ourselves accountable. We avoid looking at what we might have done wrong, and we try to pretend we didn't do anything wrong. And um, that's what we're going to try to focus on today, is looking at, you know what was my role in what happened at this particular time, and what can I do to avoid making this mistake in the future. um, we do have some group exercises going on today. We want you to know that we would love for you to share. We want you to feel free to share, but we also want you to feel free not to share. If you are not comfortable sharing, that's totally okay. You can be a wallflower if you like. One thing we would ask is that you be kind and respectful and supportive to others. And, you know, people are going to be perhaps bearing their souls and describing the mistakes they've made in their life. And this is not a time for judgment, or bashing other people. So just do keep that in mind as we share with each other. Um, I am going to share my screen real quick. So uh, we on the Clearer Thinking website, we have a program, um, to help you identify and diagnose mistakes. And we sort of boiled all of this down into three tenets and six questions. So most of what I've said above can be described in three tenets. Remember that most problems are potential improvements screaming at you. Be honest with yourself and with others about your flaws, and identify both the immediate cause and the root cause of your problem. And as we begin exercise one, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the immediate cause and the root cause. So I'll have some more words to say about that in a second. But just in general in your life, if you're diagnosing mistakes that you've made, these are six good questions to help you really nail down the problem. So, what went wrong? Have you made a mistake like this before? Because often we have patterns of behavior that result in us making the same mistakes over and over. And a lot of mistakes are not just one off kinds of things, they are repetitive. What was the immediate cause of the problem? In other words, what was the event or the behavior that led to this particular problem? And then what was the root cause of the problem? And this means, what is it about your personality, or what is it about your patterns of behavior that cause problems like this for you over time and in other areas of your life? What can you do to correct the problem in the short term, and what can you do to prevent problems like this in the long term? I have a couple different quotes if you want to read through those. I think they're pretty insightful. One of my favorites is, an expert is a person who's made all the mistakes that can be made in a very narrow field. I would add to this, although I love that quote, I would add, it's a person who's made all the mistakes and reflected on them in a very narrow field. Because, if I went to NASA right now and started trying to help them build, you know, build onto the International Space Station or something, I would make lots of mistakes. I know nothing about uh, physics and cosmology and things like that. So I would make a lot of mistakes. That does not mean I'm an expert. An expert is a person who makes mistakes and then reflects on those mistakes. Um, and Ray Dalio has that summed up real nicely. Pain plus reflection equals progress. Okay, so I'm going to share this document with you in the chat in just a second, but I'm just going to take a moment to describe the first exercise, and then we'll start it on our own. So, for the first exercise, for 5 minutes, sit alone and write down or think about the answers to the following questions. If you have the ability to write down your answers, I think I think just typically we tend to learn more when we write things down, but you can certainly just think if you would prefer. Try to come up with a list of 3 mistakes you've made. Of those mistakes you've listed, pick one that you think you could learn something important from. Now, most mistakes have an immediate cause and a root cause. Remember, the immediate cause is the event, decision, or behavior that led directly to this particular mistake. But the root cause, on the other hand, refers to the part of your personality or patterns of behavior that cause similar mistakes over time and in other parts of your life. And you can discover the immediate and root causes by repeatedly asking why questions, just like a child, why, you know, I have a 9-year-old and she does this to me all the time where, you say, uh, you need to go clean your room. Why? Because it's dirty. Why? Blah, 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 and they do that kind of thing. And you can sort of do this to yourself as you're diagnosing your own mistakes. And and then question 4, is there a lesson you can draw? Is there something you can do differently? Is there a way to prepare yourself in the future? And so on. So here's a little example. I failed my math test. Why did I fail my math test? So I've started by asking a why question, right? Because I didn't study hard enough the night before. Why didn't I study hard enough the night before? Well, because I decided to hang out with my friends instead of studying. Why did I decide to hang out with my friends instead of studying? Because I hate math and I get anxious about working math problems. So it's much more fun to spend time with my friends than studying math. And as I work through this analysis, I see that there's an immediate cause, which is I just didn't study the night before. That was why I failed in this particular case. But the root cause is that I have anxiety about math and I have this pattern of avoiding doing math homework, avoiding studying for the test. Therefore, if I want to avoid making this and similar mistakes in the future, I should work to overcome that anxiety by asking friends for help, asking the teacher for help, watching video tutorials, doing extra practice, and so on and so forth. So that's what we want you to do in this first exercise is to come up with 3 mistakes you've made, pick one of them, and then use these tools to kind of diagnose what went wrong. And I do want to just point out that in exercise 2, we're going to break into groups of 3 or 4 people, and we'd like for you to share what you learned from exercise 1. So as you're thinking about what mistake you want to diagnose in exercise 1, you might want to pick something that you're comfortable sharing with others. Again, you don't have to share, but if you'd like to, we would really we think that would be very valuable to you and to others. So let me share the link with you real quickly in the chat, and here it is. And Shrikant, I'll let you take over here. Are we gonna do breakout rooms, or are you just gonna time us, or what? What do you think?
Yes, we're just going to do time. So we're going to give 5 minutes. So I'm starting my timer now for 5 minutes. So folks, take 5 minutes to do the exercise. Can we go ahead and put back the exercise on the screen?
Yes. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
All right.
Wonderful. So starting the 5 minutes now.
Okay.
Go ahead.
For this second exercise, we're going to take a little bit longer this time. It's going to be 12 to 15 minutes. We're going to break into groups of 3 or 4 and share with each other the mistake that you examined and diagnosed in that first exercise and what you learned from it. Why was it valuable to you to have made that mistake? So I'll share my screen again, and Shrikant, if you'll break us into breakout rooms, that'd be great.
Okay. We're going to do that. The share screen will not go to the breakout rooms.
Right. Okay.
So, so it's not necessary to share the screen.
Okay.
So folks, I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. The aim is to have about 3 to 4 people in the room. So first is that don't feel obligated to share if you don't want to share. So it's completely voluntary. We encourage you to share because that's the way in which you get the maximum value out of this meetup. For any reason, if you're not happy with the breakout rooms, you can come back over here and I will I'll be there in the main room. All right. So
Shrikant,
yes,
before we do that, Anna has asked in the chat if the breakout rooms will be recorded and put on YouTube.
breakout rooms will are never recorded or put on the YouTube.
Okay.
So we don't put breakout rooms in the only the main room is recorded and put on the YouTube. All right. So I'm starting the breakout rooms now. All right. Okay. So let's go to the next part.
Okay. Uh, I'm gonna share this document one more time because I know sometimes the link gets lost when we go to breakout rooms and that kind of thing, and it looks like we had some new people join. So here's the document we're working from, everyone, if you want to take a look at that. Um, for the third exercise, we're gonna again break into groups of 3 or 4 for 12 to 15 minutes, just like the last exercise. And I've got a couple questions I want us to take a look at. Let me share my screen just real quickly. So question one, and Shrikant mentioned at the beginning that we're going to kind of switch now from looking at, particular mistakes that we've made to a sort of meta level. And this is the time for that. So question one is, why do people often make the same mistakes over and over again and fail to learn from those mistakes? There's that quote I like: insanity is repeating the same mistakes over and over and expecting different results, right? Um, but it's amazing how many of us do that, how we make mistakes over and over. We don't even realize often that we're making the same mistakes over and over. And often I think pain and suffering are a good guide that either our own suffering or the suffering of the people around us is a good guide to the fact that maybe we're making the same mistakes over and over, and we should take a look at that. But so question one is, why do we think that's the case? Why do people fail to learn from their mistakes? Question two, how can you make sure that you yourself won't make those mistakes over and over again? And question three, why do we have such a hard time talking to each other about our mistakes? Why do we have such a hard time admitting to ourselves that we've made them? Why do we make excuses for them? Why do we try to shuffle the blame off on other people? That kind of thing. So, yeah, we're going to give you 12 to 15 minutes to talk about that and hopefully gain some insights there. And then we'll come back together for our final takeaways.
Um, let's let's do one more thing. I'm going to give chance for a couple of people to talk about their takeaways from the first group.
Sure.
So I'm going to, if you'd like to share what you got from the first group, just go ahead and type an exclamation mark. And Josh, while I'm setting up the rooms, if anybody types in exclamation mark, you can call on them
Sure.
to ask the questions.
Okay. Hyro says he or she wants to share something.
All right,
Something.
Hyro, what's your
Yes,
quick share? 1 minute.
yes. Briefly, this is very interesting. Thinking about this, uh, because mistakes is kind of a synonym with sin, and that's in religion. And then the equivalent in Buddhism might be non-virtuous deed. And in Buddhism, they actually teach to regret what we've done to then kind of enforce our motivation to not do it again. That's all for now. Thank you.
Okay. Anna, you're next.
Yeah, I just have a question, which is I don't quite have a clear definition of what a mistake is, because I think like any action leads to a multitude of consequences, some of which are good, some of which are bad. And so I was wondering if anyone had a definition of a mistake.
Well, this may not be the best definition, but the first thing that comes to mind for me is when you expected a certain outcome and then you didn't get that outcome. So you wanted to have a certain kind of interaction with someone, and then the interaction ended up going a different way because you either failed to understand the other person well, or you failed to interact with them correctly, or there's a variety of reasons. But I suppose that's the first thing that comes to mind. That may not be the best definition, and that's totally off the top of my head, but that's the first thing that, yeah, that I think about. Jesse says you can maybe define it as a decision whose consequences overall you regret. So.
Okay, next up is Joe.
I'll just make a very, very brief comment, is that one of the takeaways from our room was the idea of misaligned values and goals leading to a mistake. So the idea of how that actually plays into the next set of questions is important as well, because at a meta level, we don't necessarily think about what we started out with our objectives being the mistake, not necessarily the mistake itself.
Excellent. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start the breakout rooms. Can you repeat the questions, Josh, that you want them to think about in the breakout rooms?
Sure. Question 1, why do people often make the same mistakes over and over again and fail to learn from those mistakes? Question 2, how can you make sure that you yourself don't make the same mistakes over again? And question 3, why do we have such a hard time talking to each other and admitting to ourselves that we've made mistakes?
Excellent. So we're going to run the breakout rooms for 15 minutes, after which we'll come back, and then about a dozen people will have a chance to share their takeaways. So if you have your takeaways, that's the time you'll be able to share it. So I'm going to go ahead and start the breakout rooms now.